Hi, I'd like to walk you through the process to apply for the stimulus payment, the economic impact payment or coronavirus relief payment from the IRS, specifically for people who do not have a requirement to file a U.S. tax return. So I'm starting on this page, irs.gov/coronavirus. This is where you'll find most of the coronavirus information. And then if you continue to / non-filers enter payment info here with hyphens in between each one, and I'll include the link below or above. This is where you will start. And when you log in, when you start here, it's going to show you what you need, the information you need, and who's eligible. So number one, in general, anybody with a social security number who is a U.S. citizen or a resident alien is eligible for this payment. But this particular process that we're going over is for people who don't have an obligation to file a U.S. tax return. You need to be really clear on if you do have an obligation to file a U.S. tax return. A lot of the people that I work with, because I primarily work with people who live outside the U.S., they don't understand that the U.S. requires reporting of all worldwide income. So if you have a job outside the U.S., if you live outside the U.S., you probably do still have a requirement to report to the U.S. So if you haven't taken care of that, now is a really good time to get that taken care of. Don't use this system if you are supposed to be filing a U.S. tax return. In addition, you don't need to use the system if you receive Social Security payments because they already have your information and they will send you they are supposed to be sending you your payment automatically. And also, you don't need to use the system if you have filed a tax return or will file a 2018 or 2019 tax return, and all you want to do is give them your direct deposit information. That system should be opening up any day now, and I may also do a video about that. So this is only for people who don't need to file a tax return. This page here explains in very brief if you had income. You can use this if you were single and your income did not exceed $12,200 in 2019 or $12,000 in 2018. And or 24,400 for married couple for 2019, and that's 24,000 for married couple in 2018. If you are married filing separately, which is the case for many people who live abroad and are married to people who aren't U.S. citizens, technically, the filing threshold for 2018 and 19 was $5. If you want more information on the filing thresholds for each year, you can go to my website. Go to hubertaxcpa.com and go to blog, the most popular post here. So back to this page. For non-filers, you enter info here. Once you click that, it shows you, again, it reiterates the requirements. And you can see here, it does say if you were married at the end of 2019 and you are not submitting information here with your spouse, you can't use this system. And also if you were not a U.S. citizen or a U.S. permanent resident, which, obviously they only want U.S. citizens here. So the first thing you need to do is create an account. If you don't already have an account, you'll need to create an account here. If you live outside the US and you don't have a US, or even if you live in the US, if you don't have a US phone number that is just yours, where you can receive a text message, I recommend that you leave this completely blank. Don't use somebody else's, don't use a phone number you don't have access to, and don't use a Skype number where you can't get a text message. In this case, I'm working with someone who already created an account, so we're going to sign in. This is the form that you will see once you log into the information for non-filers. When you click the link, the IRS is assuming that you did not need to file a tax return, and it pulls up this simplified form. This is after you've already created a user ID and you got the verification code by text message or by email and you're completely logged in. It pulls up a simplified code. It's not a simplified form. It's not a tax return. It's a form that is great for people who have no income or are under the threshold, and they're single or they're married filing jointly. Married filing jointly is that they are married to a U.S. citizen who has a social security number, and single would be single anywhere in the world. Anywhere in the world, even if they didn't tell anything to the U.S. about ever getting married. So single is single, single everywhere. If you are married to someone who is not a U.S. citizen, then you can't use this form. You can't e-file. So for somebody who is actually single or married filing jointly, you put in your first name, your middle initial, your last name, and your social security number. Don't use this form if your spouse has a U.S. taxpayer ID. If you're filing with your spouse, you're going to put in your spouse's first name, middle initial, last name, and social security number. Use your address. This needs to be an address where you could potentially get a check. Even if you are inputting your banking information, I strongly recommend use an address where you could still get a check if the direct deposit doesn't go through. So you're going to put in your full home street address, apartment number if relevant, your city. The state is only if you're in the U.S., your foreign country if you're not in the U.S. This is only if you have a foreign state or county. In most cases, you can leave that blank, and your foreign postal code. Then if you have dependents who have U.S. social security numbers, you can include them here. If you have more than 4, you can click here. This again is only relevant for dependents with social security numbers, and there's really no point in including anybody who was over the age of 17 because they're not going to get it. If they're borderline, go ahead and put them in and see what happens if you're not really sure what year it applies to. But if you have your 20-year-old is living with you and let's say they're in university and you're supporting them and whatever, there's really no point in including them here. You're not going to get money for them. And if they are eligible to be claimed as your dependent, they also aren't. They also can't get their own money. So there is a good segment of the population, students and elderly people who are claimed on someone as a dependent or can be claimed as a dependent that just can't get this money. Then you're going to put in your routing number and account number. And this is only if you have a U.S. account. As far as I understand, the IRS will not deposit money to a foreign account. You're welcome to try it, but as far in all of my experience, this must be a U.S. routing number and a U.S. account number to a U.S. bank account. Most likely that account needs to be in your own name. It's possible if the person shares your last name, it'll still go through. I don't know. You're welcome to try it, but as far as I know, it should be your own account. You must select checking or savings. That's actually important. I've heard of the direct deposits not going through if that's incorrect. The identity protection PIN is only if you have an identity protection PIN. If you don't know what it is, there's a good chance you don't have one and you can leave it blank. You would have one if the IRS suspected identity theft and they sent one to you, or if you applied for one. This is something that you need a new one every single year. Hopefully you don't need it and you can leave it blank. And then you would continue to step 2. The first thing you're going to put in is last year's AGI. In most cases, if you're using this form, it's because you didn't file a tax return in 2018. So this is going to be 0. You would just put in 0 there. And if you're filing jointly with your spouse, you would put 0 for that person. If you're not filing jointly, you leave that blank. You can also use last year's 5-digit PIN. If you filed with an accountant, there's a good chance that 5-digit PIN is the last 5 digits of your social security number. You can use one or the other. You can ask your accountant. But again, if you file a tax return in 2018, you probably don't need to do this form because you're supposed to be getting the refund automatically. Then you electronically sign. You use today's date and cell phone number. I have not tried it without a cell phone number. You're welcome to try it if you have a foreign cell phone. It does work with just about any number that is the right amount of digits. It works with just about any number that's the right amount of digits. So when I did it, I used the foreign phone number and I just took off the country code and it fits and it went through. You're not going to get a text message, but that's okay. You're going to get an email. You need to choose your own 5-digit PIN. Again, most people are using the last 5 digits of their social security number, but you're welcome to pick your own. You put in your own date of birth. This is part of verifying your ID. And if you have a U.S. driver's license, you put that information in here. If you don't have a U.S. driver's license, then you don't need to put anything in here. You can just go ahead without it, and it'll still go through. I haven't actually put in all the information, so I can't actually continue to e-file, but that is an option. I've done it before. You continue to e-file. It's going to pop up a CAPTCHA, and then that will go through. If it doesn't pop up a CAPTCHA, it may pop up something saying you're missing information. You go, you figure out what you're missing, you try again, you put in the CAPTCHA, and then it'll pop up something that you need to read and say that you agree, and then it'll go through. Something else will pop up saying that you have filed, and you should also get an email.